Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast, where we talk about anime and anime-adjacent topics. My name is Austin, I'm the host here, and I, for the record, do not think that mochi is nasty. With me on this episode, I am joined by...
Hello, it's Tori, and just like my good friend Tamako, I like anything that is nice and sticky.
Ew.
Me too, I guess.
I mean, what do we have? We have stickers, we have mochi, we have those little stretchy hands out of the 25-cent machine.
Yeah.
We've got the guys
Those are
with
called
the,
gachapons.
Yeah.
We've got the guys with the sticky hands you throw on the wall.
Yeah.
They stay up there for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a story.
Yeah,
But anyway,
we could record a podcast on that.
there's another voice in here. Who is this?
It is I, Andrew, and I am the potential bride of a prince on a southern island.
Oh,
Yeah.
aren't we so, honored to be in the presence of at least potential royalty?
You have no idea how high I can fly.
Oh, no.
with your glorious feathers.
Yes.
Gaze upon them, young lady.
Yeah, and don't sneeze on me because I'll love you.
So all of these things, if you think, what in the world are we talking about? These are all references to the anime series and film that we're going to be talking about on this episode, Tamako Market and its sequel, Tamako Love Story,
Yay.
a 2013 anime from one of my favorite all-time anime directors, Naoko Yamada, and from one of my favorite all-time anime studios, Kyoto Animation. We're going to be talking about that, but first, I guess we'll just catch up a little bit. Andrew, it's been forever since you've been on the show. How are you?
Yeah, it has been forever since I've been on the show. The last episode I was on was, Anime in Review 2018?
Yes, I believe so, and I think that still stands as our second most popular episode under Casa of Cagliostro.
And it was like 24 hours long.
Yeah, can't wait to do it
25,
this year.
actually.
Oh my god, yeah. But yeah,
Man.
I've been since then. I've finished an entire semester of school, and and one semester of summer school. So I'm rearing to go, man. I'm finally back at home for a little bit, get a little respite before I have to go back up to Boone and brave the wilds of the mountain.
Grow that long beard, hunt bears.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I can see the anime adaptation of you now. It's just like my college life with a bear as my professor, question mark.
No, the anime adaptation of me now is just island time. Like, it's constant shorts, no socks till October. It starts about April, and then it's just flip-flops all the time.
Laid back Andrew camp.
Yeah, I live that life.
Oh, no.
Well, Tori, you've been on a lot, as have I. But how are you?
I'm good.
Well said.
I'm under immense stress constantly, every day, but I'm good.
Okay. Well, then I'm certainly, I venture to assume that you're probably very happy that we are talking about something like Tamako Market as opposed to, Berserk.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to watch something soft.
Yes, the show is very soft in many, many contexts.
Yeah.
And we're very excited to talk about it, but before that, if this is your first time listening to an episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast, welcome. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate your listenership and for you to shove our voices into your ears. We certainly appreciate that. We are Third Impact Anime. We are a panelist and podcast group that does panels and podcasts about anime and stuff. You can find out more about us over on our website, which is thirdimpactanime.com. And right at this very moment, we are doing a special giveaway courtesy of our friends at Lost Ark Video Games in Greensboro, North Carolina. They have given us 4 import Japanese figures that will be given away to 4 lucky listeners just like yourself, hopefully. They are figures of, what do we have? We have Ash and James from Pokemon. That's 2 separate figures. We have a Goku from Dragon Ball Super and a Ruler from Fate Apocrypha figure, and they're all super nice. figures, and you can get one for your very own and get them out of my house and into yours for the price of just a simple Facebook review or something. It's all detailed in the article on the website. So again, go to thirdimpactanime.com and you'll see the featured articles section. There will be one that has the Lost Ark video games logo on it. If you click on that one, you will see all of the details on how you can enter to win our giveaway. And if you are a long-time listener of the show or a new-time listener of the show, there are many ways that you can support the things that we do here. Most notably, just share our podcast with your friends. Tell people about our show. If you think that we do a decent job talking about these Japanese cartoons, well then tell somebody about it. We'd really appreciate it. You can also come and join our Facebook community, which is facebook.com/groups/Third Impact Anime Community. And if you are feeling really generous, you can go over to our Patreon page. Yes, of course we have a Patreon. Everybody has one these days. And it's patreon.com/thirdimpactanime. But if you forget all of what I've just said, just remember thirdimpactanime.com. That's where you can find all of the information about us. Did I do that right, guys? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I knew that anyway. I was just looking for some feedback.
Wow.
Wow.
It's very important to ask for criticism, even when you don't deserve any.
Okay.
But Tori, what video game did you just start recently?
I started the first Yakuza game, and it is so fun. Oh my goodness. I definitely stayed up until almost 5 a.m. yesterday playing it.
Oh my gosh.
And I haven't done that for a long time. I actually got my sleep schedule back on track for a little bit. But
Until now.
But oh my god, this game is so fun. I think when you called me yesterday, I picked up the phone and I was just like, hold on, I'm beating a man with a bike. Give me a second.
That's exactly what you said. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's so much fun. And it's so... right away, I really like the main character. And I'm excited to get to a lot of the silly stuff, like the karaoke mini games and going to the host clubs and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting story so far. And I do have to say though, the button mashing style of gameplay really is painful after a while. I was getting very bad wrist cramps. But I don't care. It's very fun.
Now, is that because of the button mashing mechanic, or is that just because you were playing for 6 hours straight?
I mean, it's a combo of both, perhaps.
How hard were you mashing the button?
How much skin is left on your fingers?
Yeah.
Am I on trial here?
Yes.
Let me see your hands.
Oh no. These calluses are from hard manual labor.
Yeah, for sure.
Beating men with bikes.
Yes.
Well, I have also started a very anime video game myself. I have finally, after all these years, started Nier Automata.
Yeah.
Is that how you're supposed to say it?
Yep.
Nier Octagon.
Listen, I have had to hear from my time at GameStop on the damn GameStop TV, Nier Automata so much, and that is not how you say that word.
Near Automatopoeia.
Exactly. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, I'm also having a lot of fun with it. It reminds me of a more polished gameplay style of something like Kingdom Hearts, where it's very hack and slash, but it has some RPG elements to it as well. And it's got this really not so vast that it's overwhelming, but still pretty vast, open world exploration thing to do. The setting is really neat. The initial premise is really cool. All of the robots are either terrifying or adorable or both at the same time. And I was under the impression that you just from just cultural osmosis through Twitter and social media and whatnot. I just thought you were playing as 2B by herself the whole time, but 9S is with you the whole time, at least for now, at least in the beginning of the game. And I really like their back and forth. They have a nice chemistry together. 2B is very stoic, very straight to the point, very like focused on the mission, and 9S is a little bit more inquisitive and like he asks questions, and he seems to have more of a personality than 2B sort of lets herself have, or even has.
Yeah, judging this game off of what social media tells you about it, you're going in expecting a completely different thing.
Yeah, so the folks on social media definitely play up certain assets of this game that that the game itself does. I mean, they're definitely there, but like it doesn't really call attention to some of the more what's the word I'm looking for? I guess fan servicey elements of the game, but like so far it's really smart. It's really fun. It's really unlike anything else that I've played, really, and I'm just having a lot of fun with it. It just I never know what to expect. Like each individual scenario is always something new, and I'm only about maybe 9 or 10 hours into it, but it's really, really enjoyable so far. It is very, very anime, and I mean that is a compliment.
Okay.
More or less. But anyway, unless you guys have anything else you'd like to talk about, let's move into Tamako.
All right. Let's go.
Let's do it. So Tamako Market was released in the winter season of 2013, a whole 6 years ago, if you can believe it. It was directed by Naoko Yamada, one of the youngest and most highly praised anime directors working today. This is one of her original works, and she also directed K-On!, A Silent Voice, and Liz and the Bluebird. Series composition and script writing was handled by Reiko Yoshida, who has written for Yawamushi Pedal, Free, Lou Over the Wall, Girls und Panzer, a ton of Digimon, A Silent Voice, K-On!, and is actually the original creator of Tokyo Mew Mew.
Yes!
The character designs are, unsurprisingly, from the de facto KyoAni character designer for much of the 2000s and onward, Yukiko Horiguchi, who also designed for K-On!, Chunibyo, Lucky Star, and Kokoro Connect, where she used her pen name Shiro Mizukana, that's one word, that she uses for whenever she works on light novels. And she was also an animation director for Nichijou, Beyond the Boundary, and Free. So Tori, could you give us the cast breakdown, please?
Yes, so we have our lovely Tamako, and she's played by Aya Suzaki, who you might know as Mako in Kill la Kill.
Yeah.
I can hear that now that you point that out.
Mako.
She was also Minami in Idolmaster Cinderella Girls, and fun fact, which I made a note of this too, she actually sings the opening and endings, which are both absolutely fantastic. We have our main good boy, who is the love interest, Mochizo, and he is played by Atsushi Tamaru, and he was in Sword Art Online, Silver Spoon, Haikyuu, and Gundam Build Fighters. We have the other good boy, Dara, and he's played by Takumi Hamazaki. He was Isamu in Macross Plus, Ares in Saint Seiya, Ferio in Magic Knight Ray Earth, and
Kenneth El
he was
Malloy
Archibald in Fate Zero.
No, you gotta say the whole
Oh, you have to say
thing.
the whole thing.
No. And then we have sweet little baby angel Anko, who is played by Rina Hidaka, she was Urara in Food Wars, Silica in Sword Art Online. Oh, I didn't know this. And she was Kade in Tiger and Bunny. Oh.
And it's
Sweet.
on. Ugh.
Yeah. Gosh, Mom.
So Andrew, can you give us the breakdown of what Tamako Market's about?
Sure. Tamako is the daughter of a mochi shop owner in the Usagiyama shopping arcade. So she and her friends, and her and couple of her friends are the members of the baton club at their local high school. They practice in the gymnasium for baton club and talk about various sort of nothing slice of life things. They go to what was the coffee shop called?
It is Star and Clown.
The Star and Clown coffee shop with the sad record man, and they drink coffee.
That's my stage name, Star and Clown.
Yeah. And then there's lots and lots and lots and lots of mochi, and lots of mochi loving. And so one day, this talking bird from a southern island is all that is described, called Dara, appears and moves into Tamako's house. And Dara is this sort of like masculine bird that talks, and he's sort of pest at the beginning of the show, but he gets better. So the show follows Tamako and her friends and the antics of Dara and his mysterious origins, all while balancing schoolwork and bathhouses. Mm-hmm. That's essentially what the show's about.
Mm-hmm. They do go to the bathhouse a lot.
They do.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, do they have a shower at their house?
Probably
they do.
Not.
They do.
They do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think it's just because they're trying to support their local business.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's very kind of them.
Yeah.
Them all living in the shopping arcade and, everybody sort of being neighbors with each other. I guess supporting local business is the same as just like, giving your neighbor a high five in this neighborhood.
Yeah. And then like when Tamako walks down the street to go to school or from school, she's always getting like free stuff from the various shop owners. So
yeah, absolutely. Pay it forward and whatnot.
Yeah.
So really, so you may be asking yourself, Austin, why did you want to talk about, Tamako Market, this somewhat obscure, not as popular as other things like KyoAni TV show from 2013 that nobody really talks about? Part of the answer is that I just realized that, in fact, not a lot of people do talk about this show, and I have gained a huge appreciation and love for Kyoto animation in recent years with seeing things like A Silent Voice come out, which is such a special film, something we all really like that Andrew really needs to see now that it's on Netflix.
Yep.
I own it. It's in my room. You can come watch it anytime.
Okay.
But yeah, and just seeing Naoko Yamada's name pop up more and more as sort of a figurehead of like this new wave of anime directors that are very emotionally raw in their storytelling, but are also incredible visual directors and can command anime as a medium. And I just really wanted to highlight this piece of her work that I feel is somewhat underappreciated. We'll kind of get into this, but I definitely don't think it's her strongest work. But I think it's a piece of her work that deserves a little bit more recognition than what it gets. And I think, and Tori, you might be able to speak to this because you watched this as it was airing back in the day.
I did, yeah. And I'm a little biased because KyoAni is what got me back into anime in general. So, yeah.
Right. And you may be able to speak to this as well, but it seems like the reaction to this show back whenever it first came out was a little bit on the more condescending side, because I don't really think people had really come around to things like this maybe whenever it came out in 2013. Because I went back very briefly and read some of the impressions on my anime list back from 2013, and a lot of them were just like, if you like moe, this is the show for you, and that seemed to be a very common, I guess, sort of critique of things back then, but I see that thrown around a lot less these days. It seems like our guttural reaction as fans to things that are cute, I guess, has gotten a lot less visceral, it seems.
Yeah, so back when I was watching this and back in kind of like my early days of kind of coming back around to watching anime, I wasn't very active in like talking to other people online about shows unless they were like my immediate friends. So I didn't really participate in a lot of online like groups or anything, so I wasn't really hearing anything. Like I really don't even read like reviews anymore for anything, because I kind of want to go into it without a like a preconceived notion of something.
Yeah, that's very understandable.
But I do agree with you. There's been that shift of like, you know, people coming around to just realizing that they're allowed to enjoy things and they don't have to like completely trash everything. And at the end of the day, you know, if you just want to sit down and watch a show that's soft and doesn't really have a lot of substance, that's okay. Like, we don't have to constantly be watching Berserk over and over and over.
Right, it's like not every series is going to be Serial Experiments Lane,
Exactly.
or Paranoia Agent, and you should just enjoy them for what they are.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of heart in this show, and but yeah, like, you know, we are coming out of that age of people like throwing around like moe is sort of an insult. Like, you don't really like anime if you like moe shows, or oh, that's just another like dumb cutesy show about nothing. And I'm just like, okay, we are allowed to focus on character development and how people live everyday life. It doesn't have to constantly be, you know, blood, gore, violence, adult, you know. So
yeah
it's whatever.
I think that might be sort of a retainer from sort of perhaps like the early 2000s or the 1990s, because a lot of stuff then, like in all mediums, was supposed to be sort of like edgier to appeal to that audience.
Yes.
For some, not necessarily edgy, but like there was
More
definitely
adult.
there was definitely a more sort of tonal shift in everything in the 1990s and early 2000s to more adult. And I'm looking at the winter 2013 season right now, and nothing really stands out except Encouragement of Climb.
But I think
the grandfather of Laid Back Camp.
I think that joke that I kind of made earlier about, like, you know, older shows being like, oh, can I fit, you know, boobs in this shot, or can I fit somebody getting their head exploded in a very detailed manner in this shot, and like, how can I amp the show up to 11 and push it as far as I can without it being, you know, too much. And I understand, you know, there were shows earlier on that came before this that were soft and enjoyable and about character development, but I think a lot of people were coming off that like, anime is not kids stuff sort of thing. And around this time is when those moe shows really started to hit their peak. So I can see how a lot of people were frustrated with that. Maybe, does that make sense?
Yeah, to some degree for sure. And I think a lot of people's sort of color of anime that they were expecting was more in the line of your elfin leads.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, there's been a variety of takes surrounding this topic, and I don't really want to bring up this old dead horse, but like a lot of people sort of derided the whole moe phase as like the being a blight on the anime fandom.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is a very harsh critique of that, and I think that moe in some ways is not a good characterization of some shows that get put under that umbrella, with Tamako Market and K-On! Sort of being shows that are typically discussed when talking about moe, but don't really fit the mold of what a lot of, I guess for lack of a better way to say it, like worse moe shows are.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Where I don't really think it's fair necessarily to lump in shows like Tamako Market and K-On! With that, because they are different. They are made in a specific way that, you know, is certainly cute and soft, but it's also genuine. It has some realness to it.
Yeah.
But and it just sort of speaks to the nature of, you know, hot takes being bad in general.
Exactly, right.
Because we can look back at 2013 sort of in the lens of 2019, and you know, and we're seeing a lot more I think we're seeing more sort of character driven narratives like thrive,
Yeah.
in this day and age, instead of, sort of being discredited as
And
moe shows.
a lot of shows now too, especially over the last couple of years, are kind of merging back into that like semi-realistic art style. Like you would see, like when I think of that, I think of like Cowboy Bebop and like those kind of like sci-fi shows. But there's so much coming out now that fits in that sort of umbrella, like Megalobox and Dororo and stuff. So it's not as much anymore, but still,
Yeah.
whether you like
It's hard to
moe
put anime in a box.
exactly, and whether you like moe shows or not, like you're still just as valid of an anime fan as somebody who sits and watches, I don't know, Berserk.
Yeah.
Keep mentioning Berserk. We're gonna curse ourselves.
I know.
Yep.
We gotta
With the
do
Egg
a
of the
Berserk
King.
episode.
I'll have fun.
But
I
yeah.
wanna
Well,
do it.
after we dredged up that old corpse of defending moe and telling everyone they're wrong about it,
Yeah.
or saying moe is horrible and everyone's right, which
I mean, I might not be the best person to argue this because I'm like constantly into watching like cute, sugary, sweet kids shows. So I might not be the best like dog in the fight for this.
No, and I hear you, and I think that to some degree, and this sort of being my more hive mind sort of thinking process around it back then, it's like around that time, as for me as an anime fan, like I had this perception that my box of interest had to only include certain things, and I think that whenever I watched K-On! For the first time, I realized that I was allowed to like whatever show I liked
Yeah.
on its own terms and not necessarily on any terms that were artificially put on me.
Exactly. 'Cause when I watched K-On! For the first time, I was just like, God has blessed me. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think that was maybe different in my situation because I was coming at it from the angle of like, oh, well, I am a boy, so clearly these shows are not made for me, which is
Oh,
obviously
boy.
a very juvenile and kind of ironic way to think about
Oh
it.
my God. Yeah.
But yeah, this, and that comes back to Tamako Market. It's just opening myself up to being like, I can watch whatever, like the sky's the limit, and I can have my cake and eat some pie and have a cherry on top as well. And I don't really know where I'm going with that. We're not really talking about Tamako Market. We should probably talk about the
Yeah,
show,
we
actually.
need to rope it back in. But I mean, this is an
Yeah.
important discussion, sort of to the context. I think of the show we
Yeah.
are eventually going to discuss.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Because it did come out in that time where moe was sort of being derided, and it was sort of on the tail end of that, because I would say that really started with maybe stuff like Lucky Star,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
which that's its own conversation for another day. But I guess that all sort of goes back to, Kyo Annie was sort of the prototypical moe studio, but I would say that has really changed since Tamako Market. Not to say that Tamako is the progenitor of that, but Naoko Yamada most certainly is. And she was way ahead of her time, at her time, I believe. But anyway, let's actually talk about this show and stop getting on these random soapboxes.
Sure.
Tamako walked so laid back camp could run.
Tori, you had seen Tamako Market before, but rewatching it for this podcast, what did you think about it?
Okay, so like we said before, I watched it when it was airing, and I really remember being super into it. I thought it was very fun and just very sweet. And then when I went back to watch it this time, like I still thought that, but I was just like, oh my goodness, this show's a mess. but
Elaborate, please.
But, like, not in a bad way. There's just so many... I feel like when they made the show, they had a hat in which they had written on pieces of paper all of the ideas that you will normally see in a KyoAni show, but usually more fleshed out. And they were like, okay, here's idea 1, here's idea 2, here's idea 3, and none of them correlate with each other, but we're going to put them all in this show and just let it happen.
And I don't know I think that might be something I could forgive, because it really, the show doesn't really happen in sort of a short time frame.
Exactly.
It does cover the entire span of a year in 12 episodes. So
right.
And like, you know, a year in like anime time, you know, can be done in a time skip, but like this covers it in a more linear fashion. And I think sort of that idea that they did sort of jump around, and they did, I think that could be, you know, slightly forgiven, that it does naturally and sort of like it covers time in a way that shows typically don't.
Yes.
It covers time in sort of like a slow fashion, and you know, that's fine. And I think that's something I can
right. And I was thinking earlier, I was like, you know what? Had they taken the show, I guess it's because like now I know how to look at things a little more like critically and not just take it at such a face value. But I think if they had taken the show and restructured it in more of like an episodic format, like, yes, they can still have the plot of, like, you know, Mochizo being in love with Tamako, but he doesn't want to tell her. And then all of a sudden we have this talking bird. And everybody was just so weirdly cool with that. Like, nobody really questioned it.
Yeah.
And nobody questions when Choi shows up later and is like, hello, I'm here for the prince. And they just all rolled with it. It was really cool.
Yeah.
But I think if they had structured it in a little more, like, episodic way, watching it now, I think I would have enjoyed it and not felt so, like, pulled in so many different directions, like fresh mochi.
Yeah.
But I still really like the show. Like, I don't want that to be, you know, me being like, don't watch Tamako Market because it's bad. Because we do get a lot of goodness coming from the characters more so than the plot.
And I think that's something that you see a lot in a lot of KyoAni things. Like Beyond the Boundary is a show that I like, but it's got some major deficiencies that I have problems with. And I think some of its deficiencies are kind of the same ones that Tamako Market has, in the sense that I really, really like the characters. I think they have wonderful writing, wonderful chemistry with each other, and the way that their relationships play out on the screen is the best part of the whole show.
Yes.
I could really not give a crap about the whole, like, feuds of clans and like fighting monsters and all that junk in Beyond the Boundary. I just want to see like the cute fun antics of Mirai and what's his name, Aki just, you know, hanging out with each other and being awkward and being silly. And that's kind of how I feel about Tamako Market too. Like, I don't like the whole like prince from the southern islands looking for a bride,
that was so
plot
weird.
Point was it. Yeah, and it didn't really fit much into the rest of the show. I didn't hate it. I mean, it was kind of used as a vehicle to just get Dara there. And Dara I found very, very irritating early on, but he does get much better. Some of his gags are really, really good. Some of his perspective on situations as like the outsider who's this weird bird creature that can comment on their lives with no repercussions, really. I like that aspect, but yeah, it's you don't come to either of these shows for strict narrative or story-based entertainment. You come to these for great character.
You could say that a lot about a lot of KyoAni works. I mean, some are definitely more stronger than others, and that's fine. It's like, you know, when you're a studio who's making so much, it's like, of course, you know, something is always going to be better than the other, but that's kind of what I come back to KyoAni for, and that's kind of what made me fall in love with them so much originally, is like, I can forgive a messy narrative or a not so great narrative if you are giving me the majority of the work within your characters. Like that's
Right.
fine. I love that.
And that's something that's always sort of interested me in any narrative, really, is I don't like stories that are driven by plot, because plot to me is boring in a box. But character driven narratives are always sort of going to be like long standing. Like you don't remember specific like plot details about Laid Back Camp because that's not important. You remember character interactions and how their relationships grow because that's what's important. Because you can't project yourself onto a plot, but you can project yourself onto a character, and I think that this show really understands that, and that's something that K-On! Really understands, and a lot of sort of this mold of slice of life show really understands, and that is, I think, something that a lot of people can kind of miss on, because if you focus on like killing the Demon King more than you focus on
That's just a
building
typical Tuesday for me.
right. You focus on killing the Demon King more than you focus on, you know, making a believable character, then your story can fall short.
Right, and I think KyoAni is really good at understanding and projecting the nuances of human emotion. And for somebody who is very like feelings-based type of person, just to see that in their work versus like them saying, you know, human interaction is more important, and how you treat people and how you interact with others is more important than being the hero because you defeated the Demon King on a Tuesday, which is my new light novel coming out next week.
I'll buy it.
Your title's not long enough.
I know, but and like you said, it's like, you know, I can watch these shows, and something that stuck out to me, I know we're going to talk about the movie a little bit later, but like Tamako, like, I wrote a note on it. Hold on. So, because of, like, their discussion, Tamako starts to, like, ignore Mochizo because they don't want to have that difficult discussion about him leaving. And I was like, oh my god, we have all been there. Like, there have been times where instead of having a difficult conversation with a person, I just avoided them and, like, wanted to pretend like it didn't happen. And, you know, that is something that people can kind of take in and be like, yeah, that's normal. That happens to everybody.
Yeah. Right. I think a common complaint that's like levied at K-On!, for example, is like, well, they don't play enough music. But I'm just like, really?
It's
music
not about
is
that,
just
and if you
kind
want
of
that,
the vehicle.
go watch Soundophonium, okay?
Watch Soundophonium, go watch Love Live, Automasters,
and what
you know.
And what I see in like Tamako Market and K-On! Is like building blocks to lead us to some of the more both highly character driven and highly plot driven series that came later from KyoAni, which would be something like Sound Euphonium, like A Silent Voice, and like Violet Evergarden. And I guess I'd throw Free into that mix too because of like the sports competition angle.
Yeah.
But like those are series that I think build on the wonderful character direction that KyoAni can do, and also blending it with great stories.
Yes.
Tamako Market, I don't think is that show. And you know what? That's okay. Because I think there's still a lot to like about Tamako Market. You guys sort of outlined. And a lot of it is through the characters. Like, you can tell that Tamako she's very naive. She's very kind. She's very, I guess that's just a good way to put it. But she's never treated as any of those things being a weakness.
No, she never gets taken advantage of or, like, what's the phrase I'm looking for? She's not a human doormat, basically, just because she's kind and takes care of other people.
Right, and she also has incredible initiative. When she wants to get something done, she gets it done. So she's a very multifaceted character while also being sort of, you know, a young gal, who works at a mochi store and all this stuff, and has no idea that the boy who has a crush on her has a crush on her. And Mochizo, again, I really like Mochizo because he's very he's a good blend of a character that is both, not quite comfortable with his own feelings about certain things, but not so uncomfortable that he's like pathetic.
Yes. He's not the typical character of like, oh, woe is me, I'm going to be alone forever because Tamako will never notice me. It's just like...
Yeah, he's not just this forlorn whiner that just stays in his room and cries and like, all that stuff. Because that gets really old, and it's very... That's like not the typical way that people do that. Like
exactly, and it's like telling somebody that you like them is a very normal thing to be anxious over because you don't know how it's going to go. And especially, I think there was some conversation in there that was like, they had known each other so long. So I think the angle of like, well, if I tell Tamako, she might not be my friend anymore. And I think that's something that a lot of people have gone through.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very common human thing and to see in relationships, and to see it whenever it's done genuinely, like I definitely do think is in the case of Tamako and Mochizo, is just very refreshing. It like I'll always bring it back to, whenever I talk about anime romances, bringing it back to Toradora, which is a series that I find endlessly frustrating, way too long, and just I'm not a fan of Toradora. If you're a fan, that's cool. I am not. I do not think that is a great anime romance series.
I agree. In every facet.
Right. It's just very frustrating, but Tamako Market is realistic, and while there are some frustrating elements, they are frustrating elements that you can really understand why these characters act the way that they do, because they're very rooted in real life, in what real people would do, and in what your friends have probably done, or you've probably done yourself.
Right, and there's no traditional sort of like, oh, all of it was a big misunderstanding. Well, there is a little bit of that, but it's not serious, and like...
It's not even a misunderstanding. Wait, are you talking about in Tamako?
Yeah.
It's not even a misunderstanding. It's just literally that Tamako and Mochizo have 4 brain cells collectively.
Oh.
And are just dumb.
Right.
Which, as a former high schooler myself, I can attest to this being true.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is a little like the whole angle with Chio. Is that her name?
Choi.
Choi. The whole like angle with Choi going there, and like finding Tamako and being like, you have the scent. And like, you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You have the scent. You have the scent of the prince. That whole thing, like that was a misunderstanding. But like that is not important.
You know what? That barely even registered to me. Honestly, most of the subplot with the characters from the Southern Island were just totally went right over my head. I did not absorb it at all. It was completely forgettable.
Yeah, I agree.
Not to say that I didn't enjoy Choi as a character. I thought she was charming and cute, and her interactions with the shopping arcade people and the people at school I thought were funny.
Yeah.
Some fish out of water humor.
She had her own little arc, and it was good.
Yeah, it was good, but her plot reason for being there is
it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say, though, that one of my favorite subplots, which I think is the most, like, heartfelt and excellent subplot of the whole show, is Tamako's sort of sub-journey and trying to figure out what song she was thinking of from her childhood. And just to give a little backstory, so Tamako and her sister Anko, which is another amazing character in the show, I really like Anko, their mother had passed away before the events of the show, many years before, I believe. And they're just living with their dad and their grandpa, and they are the mochi shop owners, and they all work out of their house making mochi, which are pounded rice cakes, if you didn't know. They're really good. Go to your local Asian market and pick up some. It's really yummy.
And then you'll understand why Dara gained so much weight.
Yes.
Yeah, you'll totally get it because they're irresistible. They're so good. But anyway, so Tamako has this song stuck in her head that she can't figure out what it is, and she keeps going to the Super Clown coffee shop or whatever. What's it called again?
It's called Star and Clown.
Star and Clown, excuse me. And she hums the song to the guy, the record store guy, and he's just like, I don't know that one. But then what is it? How does she find it? Does she find like a tape recording?
Yeah,
in her house?
I think so.
And then she listens to it and then realizes her dad was in a band whenever he was younger. And the song that she was thinking of was a song that he wrote for her mom, his future wife, back whenever he was in his high school punk band. And it's a really good song. It's definitely going to show up in this episode. But that was just such a sweet thing. Like, to take this very small moment in, like, the first or second episode where you get this small conversation of her trying to figure out, you know, what song is stuck in her head. And then it ends up being a song that was so important to her family, to her dad, to her mom.
Yes, because
later on. It was so sweet. I'm just, like, how, like, as a writer, how do you think of these little moments? Like, that had to have been maybe something that the writer or the director had experienced something akin to, because you just, how do you make up that level of such genuine human feeling?
Exactly, and it's even better because her dad wrote that song for her mom when they had first seen each other as teenagers, and he was like, I've got to write the song for her, and then that's how they fell in love, and that's very sweet.
It is sweet. It's just unrelentingly sweet, and I enjoy that so much.
The way she found out about it was, like, her dad, like, went off into a room by himself and, like, picked up his old guitar and, like, started playing it and sang, like, the first couple notes of the song. And she busted through the door and was like, that song!
That's right. That was it. That's right.
And then they went to the Star and Clown. And
he had a video.
Yeah, he had it on a
video
tape
of her dad playing with his band, and I don't know if you guys caught it, but they had connected the VCR to Dara, and he was projecting it through his eyes.
They did, yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Which is also another weird thing that he can do for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what?
But yeah, that was absolutely, like, bar none, like, the best little subplot, because it had enough time throughout the whole entire show, and it was sort of subverted.
It was sprinkled in.
Right, that was the only one that had a concise beginning, middle, and perfectly wrapped up in the end.
Yeah, and it was great.
Yeah, definitely. And also just a little bit about the structure of the show. So, like Andrew mentioned earlier, it is a show that happens over the course of like a year, maybe a little bit longer. And it starts off in wintertime. Like, episode 1 is a Christmas special. I wrote that down. And you see them sort of hit the major holidays, like Christmas and White Day and Valentine's Day, and these are probably out of order, but you know what I mean, like Halloween and stuff like that, and like summer vacation and all this stuff, and it's just a good way to come up with some interesting gags and antics for these characters to go through in a way that doesn't seem like it's just a holiday special, the anime, which some like high school shows end up being that, like since they do that so much. But a lot of the holiday holiday adjacent gags that they do are really clever, really well written. Like the summer break episode, especially where Tamako and her friends build a haunted house, is such a wild ride of an episode, because like all of the people in the shopping arcade, like they start to think that there's some sort of arcade cryptid around, like
that's a will-o-wisp.
a will-o-wisp. That's right. Yeah. thinking there's like some
a curse upon the shopping arcade because of Tamako's haunted house.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it was so silly, and the payoff was like so lame but amazing because of it.
Yeah, well, that's how real life is. Is like you get like so worked up and like anxious and upset about something, and most of the time it is literally the most obvious answer that's right in front of you. And I feel so hypocritical for saying that.
No, and it's episodes like that, and it's episodes like the one where Tamako tries to convince her dad to make a special Valentine's Day mochi.
Yes.
And just little interactions like that are so mundane that the normal person, when thinking about an anime, would not even expect to see. But it's things like that make Tamako Market worth watching.
Yeah.
It's not the plot. If you read a synopsis or listen to Andrew give a synopsis, that doesn't give you the whole picture.
No.
It's really... It's much more simple than that.
Yeah. The Halloween episode, though, definitely was one of my favorites, and solely on the fact of the little, like, cut-in scene of the really dramatic, like, dead businessman. And I was like, KyoAni, why have you not made a horror anime? Like, this is actually kind of frightening for this
Honestly,
show.
yeah.
And I love the gag where their teacher and his girlfriend or wife come
Yes! In the haunted house. Oh my gosh.
through. Yes.
And
It's so good.
And it was so funny because he's like, I'm not scared. And then Tamako pops up and she looks so precious. Like, how could you be scared of that? And she's like, I curse you. And he just takes off running. And meanwhile, his significant other, because I can't remember if it's his girlfriend or whatever, but
Something like that.
she walks through and she's like, wow, this is all really well done. Good job, guys.
Yeah, so good. And then they get outside and they're like, and she's like, sorry, he's always like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's really interesting, and like you sort of go back to sort of like slice of life shows being like holiday episodes, the anime, you know, like. But this is sort of like different because school is such a small part of this show because a lot of it is based around in the shopping arcade, and that's different.
Yes.
So like that's another thing that makes this show a little bit different is because it doesn't. I mean, they are in high school, and high school's in it some, but a lot of it is based around sort of their antics and around the people of the shopping arcade.
And I love how... Oh, go ahead.
Which creates this sort of, like... I don't know, like... It's like... It's less, like, about...
It feels like a living, breathing world.
Yes.
Yes, and I was just about to say that I love how... all of the people who own businesses in that shopping arcade, they're pretty much their own fleshed out characters. Like, they all have a personality. I think it would have been a super cute idea had they done some, like, spin-off shorts more about the business people, because, I mean, that would be really fun. And, it feels very real, and I'm jealous that I don't live in a place like that, because it seems like a lot of fun, and I love how they just always go with Tamako's whims. They don't even question her, which is a little scary, but like they're just like, all right, Tamako wants to do this. I'm gonna get you 200 boxes for your haunted house. Like, so it's sweet.
Yeah, the way all the community interaction is very, very supportive and very, very sort of integral in sort of enjoying the show.
Yeah.
And even the sort of cute setup of the fact that Tamako's family and Mochizo's family are both mochi shop owners that live directly across from each other.
Yeah.
And the fact that the two mochi children sort of have a crush on each other is just a sweet subplot. And the fact that their dads are always fighting, but not in like a bloody nose kind of way.
I'm gonna burn down your mochi shop.
It's not,
I think it's also the ultimate power move on both of these families for one, naming their son Mochizo, and then the other family naming their daughter Anko, because that is red bean paste, which is commonly a filling in mochi.
Yeah.
So no wonder she
Incredible.
wants to be called An, but like bean paste also sometimes is referred to as An.
So I guess let's talk about her for a second, because she is as far as I can think of whenever it comes to little sisters of the protagonist in anime, I can't think of many that really stand out, except maybe Ui in K-On!
Hey, thank you for saying ooey.
Yeah, I mean, she's fine, but like Anko gets her own little arc, and it's very sweet. She is very conflicted about being so young, but also like on the cusp of
Middle school.
like middle school, and she's like trying to make herself more mature, I guess, and like grown up. So of
Yes.
course she wants to be called An and not Anko. Like, don't call me that, Grandpa. Sort of edgy little kid.
But Anko's cute.
And then her sweet moment with the little girl that was having to get put on that uncomfortable dress for the cultural parade.
Because she had been there too.
Yeah.
Exactly, because she remembered that she was there, and she did that a couple years before, and she knew what made her feel more comfortable being in that position, and so she was able to help the little girl, and it was so sweet.
Anko was actually my favorite character, which was a really weird realization for me this time around. Because it's like, I don't know, normally, I guess it's because in a lot of series, the kids are usually very annoying. Like, Anko was just bratty enough to be endearing and not annoying, and that's a very fine line to toe. But she was just so cute, and her conflict, again, even as a kid, felt very real, because just about everybody has had an experience where somebody you're friends with, and in her case, she liked this little boy, but, like, you've had a friend that moved away. I've been on the giving end of that, and I've been on the receiving end of that, and it really sucks. So
Yeah, and I was about to say that as well. Like that whole episode with her dealing with her friend moving away was so genuine and so real, and it was really moving in such a sweet way. And I think we keep going back to these sweet scenes that we like, and I think that really shows, again, just the overall strength of the show is that it's got some real, simple, mundane, everyday human emotions and portrays them really, really well.
yeah.
I guess we should probably talk about the movie. So, I say that so ominously. I don't really mean to. But, yes, let's talk about the movie. So, the movie, I like. I think it's a really good end cap for the show. It's a really good end cap for Tamako and Mochizo in particular. It sort of gets rid of all the pretext of plot of Prince looking for a bride and a weird bird is there. It gets rid of all of that and just focuses on Mochizo's desire and also aversion to want to confess to Tamako before he moves away to Tokyo for high school.
For college.
Very simple premise.
For college.
Was it college? Are you sure?
Yeah.
They're not,
Are they that old? Are they really that
At
old?
this point, yeah,
at
because
that
he...
point, yeah.
Well,
Wow.
because the thing is like, I feel like in most Japanese schools, they start looking at college around, like, 11th grade, because they have all those crazy applications and stuff to fill out.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm wrong on that, somebody please correct me.
They were in the movie. They were in their senior year of high school.
Okay.
That is right. You're right.
I skimmed it.
Oh, that's right, because
so.
because Kana, bless her, one of Tamako's friends, she does that whole bit where she like slides on her socks in the gym.
Goodness,
it's really
yes.
funny.
Yes, and she was
And she's like, I have this thing that I want to do. What is up, friends?
And everyone's like, yes, Captain. It's like, not the captain.
I love her. She's so good.
Oh, yeah, my favorite character, by far.
Yeah, Tamako's friends are very good, but unfortunately they just don't get much screen time.
No, and I didn't get to talk about that point that with Midori. I think her name is.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Bring it up.
Well, to backtrack a little bit, there was to go back into the there's a lot of subplots that don't go anywhere, and this could be me doing one of two things, which is reading way too hard into things, which I say this all the time on these episodes, or me just grasping for whatever I can get. But there's one episode where Midori, she walks up on Mochizo getting advice from Dara, which is really awful, about how to confess to Tamako, and he's like, oh,
you should just sneeze on her.
You have to put your feathers up just like this, and he's like, I'm not doing that, that's stupid. And she's like, what are you doing? And she kind of puts two and two together, and then they have this kind of like little fight of who knows the most about Tamako to prove who cares and loves Tamako the most. And Dara's like, oh, you both have the same scent. Which, putting two and two together, obviously Mochizo is in love with Tamako, so if they both had the same scent, that could only mean that Midori is also possibly in love with Tamako romantically. And it just really comes across that way, and that never really went anywhere, and she kind of just basically gave up and left it to Mochizo. And this whole, like, I know more about her, so therefore I love her more, is kind of a really bad and unhealthy way to look at it. Like, but I guess they are high school kids, so it's whatever. But yeah, that didn't go anywhere, and I was really kind of sad about that, because I don't think that was something that I picked up on the first time around watching it, and they just act like nothing happened. And there was a scene in the movie, which would have made no sense had you not caught that little bit of dialogue, where she gets just like really pissy with Mochizo and basically bullies him into confessing to Tamako, but it just seems like she's mad at him for no reason, and I kind of really wish that plot point had gone somewhere. I mean, it didn't have to be super serious, but just give me something.
Yeah, her level of I guess anger at Mochizo did strike me as a little strange. And the way I interpreted it was that she was just doing that weird high schooler thing of being like, well, you're not possibly good enough for my friend. Plus, I wouldn't let her have a boyfriend anyway because I don't want to lose my friend because I'm angsty high school girl. Yeah. But I mean that romantic subtext. I mean, you could definitely argue that you could see it there. I mean, it's I don't think you're totally making it something up.
And I think there was like some kind of and I think there was some kind of like passing comment at some point that said she had like turned down a few guys or something like that. And I, once again, that's not proving anything, but like it's definitely adding to that. Perhaps
it's context
being a subtext. Yeah, it's context clues.
Yeah, for
it
sure.
might be but like that could also be like a thing like I mean, it could be argued both ways, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's just
I just think it's major thing that it goes nowhere either direction.
Right.
Like,
and I think that they did that on purpose.
Probably.
So going back to talk about the movie a little bit more specifically, it's a lot of people would put it on a much higher pedestal than the series itself, and I think maybe as a singular work, if you're evaluating them as two individual things, like I definitely do think that the movie is a little bit more solid as a piece of work. Like the series sort of, it wavers in quality. It's got some plot threads that go places and then don't go places, and then the ending is a little bit not bad, but a little lackluster. But the movie is I think a really good piece from start to finish, and it's got some great animation flourishes, some wonderful direction, and things like that. So it's really an excellent film. So if you were to evaluate them both as two separate things, I'd be like, movie, very good. Series, good.
Because I was bad and only had time to really skim the movie just because of so much going on here lately. Do you think this movie could be watched without watching the TV series?
No.
No,
I don't think so. Because you have to.
I would say maybe, but Andrew, continue.
I think it's so tough to. All right, so it's so hard to compress a bunch of character into a short space, especially like a film. So having 12 episodes of TV to learn the characters, that crescendo to an ending, which is not the ending of this show, it is the film, I think is super important. Especially when it comes to very character driven, very sort of thought provoking, and very like heartfelt stories like this one. And you know, I watch a lot of slice of life, so I think I might be able to talk on this a little bit. So I don't think you can evaluate the show without seeing the film, because to me it's just an extension of everything else.
Yeah,
So,
I figured that would be the answer.
so I don't think you could watch the movie without seeing the show. I have no doubt that you could probably enjoy it, but will it have the full effect? Absolutely not.
Yeah, and that's what I would have meant to say whenever I said maybe, is that, yeah, you could probably watch the movie standalone and enjoy it for its production values and its flourishes and those little moments of sort of relationship sweetness that you can get something out of with no prior knowledge, but you're going to get a much more rich and rewarding experience had you already seen the series.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I would say it's probably also true for like Liz and the Bluebird and
Yes.
Sound Euphonium.
Absolutely.
Because I'll say, yeah, because Tori, you enjoyed Liz and the Bluebird way more than I did, and I think that's probably just because you had much more familiarity with Sound Euphonium. Like, I thought Liz and the Bluebird was really good, but it didn't really quite hit me as hard as I think some other people who are big
Meanwhile,
UFO fans.
I'm sitting over there going, the entire time.
Exactly. So, I mean, that makes me really excited whenever I do finally revisit UFO at some point. And rewatching Liz and the Bluebird, because I did buy it. I own it. It's on my shelf. Yeah, I'm excited to revisit that in time. So, yeah, Andrew, I largely agree with you. For sure, that it's a much more rewarding experience to to watch the film afterwards. And I would say it lifts all ships. Like, by association, the film makes the series better. You know, we were just coming off of talking about Advent Children, and we were thinking, well, does the existence of Advent Children make FF7 better? To which we all kind of said, not really, because FF7 is so self-contained. But because Tamako, the series sort of ends and you feel a little bit lacking, the movie picks that up and runs with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the sort of thoughts around, anime films sort of being what they are, and how a lot of them are just sort of like, especially when it comes to long series like Dragon Ball Z or My Hero Academia, a lot of like their films are glorified filler episodes, but when it comes to like films like End of Evangelion, that is a sort of direct extension of the story, and sort of is required reading if you want to get the full impact of the story, full third impact of the story. And this is not like End of Evangelion at all. But
yes, it is. What are you talking about?
You gotta watch the series and you gotta watch the film to get the full, experience of the series, and that happens with a lot of things.
And I think you can definitely tell that there's a lot of Naoko Yamada more in the movie than there is in the show, because I feel like, they just kind of let her run wild with her experimental style.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of experimentation in Tamako Love Story that wasn't necessarily in the show.
Oh, yeah.
I think Naoko Yamada is one of the best directors working in the business. Certainly one of the greatest, youngest people in anime ever, like bar none. And she's one of my favorite directors of all time. I think that everything that she makes she just gets better and better.
I wouldn't call Tamako I wouldn't call it a super strong work, but it lays a lot of foundation for a lot of stuff that's to come.
Yeah, I think if you want a good idea of how she writes characters and stuff, and you don't want to be as kind of whisked away by the plot, say for something like A Silent Voice or Liz and the Bluebird, because those are two movies that are more like you really kind of need to focus on what's going on, but there's also, you know, great character writing in those movies. But if you don't want to have to use your brain so much and just want to see kind of like what makes her so great, go watch Tamako.
Yeah.
And I will say the exact same advice that I use for this, because typically I'll say, like, if you enjoyed Kill la Kill, you should go back and watch Gurren Lagann. Then you should go back and watch Evangelion and go back and watch Gunbuster. So I'll say that in the same vein, if you really enjoyed A Silent Voice, you should go back and watch Tamako Love Story, Tamako Market, K-On!, and everything else that Naoko Yamada has worked on, just to see her directorial process evolve over time. And I think Tamako Market is just an example of many stepping stones that she used to get to the position she's in today. Not to say that Tamako Market is only a piece that can be enjoyed as part of a larger whole, because I think it does in a lot of ways stand on its own.
Yes.
But I would say that if you are a fan of the Naoko Yamada way, please don't just ignore Tamako Market and think, oh, that was that kind of meh thing that she did, because it's not the case. It's definitely above meh.
Yeah, did we talk about the movie enough? Because I feel like we did not.
I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about. I mean, it's really like just the culmination and the finale of Tamako and Mochizo's, romantic feelings for each other. But if you want to expand more on it, I mean, go ahead. I mean, Andrew, you just watched it, so do you have any other takes that we didn't cover?
I mean, it's all in the title. You know, it's once again, it's
That's
not
so true.
You know, it's one of those things that is like, yes, you should absolutely watch it, but I can't sit here and explain to you all the story beats, because that's going to sound boring.
Exactly.
So it's sort of tough to approach something like Tamako Market and try and give you a plot synopsis, because that's not important. So the only real way to do it is to, understand the characters and understand their relationships, and then you'll get the culmination of the story, which is, I love you, and that's sort of it's not it's definitely a plot for Mochizo in the show, but in film that becomes more of a plot for Tamako, even though Mochizo is kind of, I would call him the main character of Tamako Love Story.
Oh, sure, for sure. It's really from his perspective.
Yes. So when I was skimming through, because I had it pulled up and I kept hitting the fast forward 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, and it must have been fate, because I stopped at just the right time. And it was when I really need to go back and watch this, because this got me really bad. But when he throws the string phone to her, and which it was really cute that they brought that back. And because that was, their whole direct line of communication. And he tells her, but he's leaving, and Tamako gets really upset, and she's like, we've spent our whole lives together, why are you leaving me? And I was like, why? But then it ended on a happy note, so I was okay. But emotionally, that hurt me.
So, Andrew, I'll put you on the spot. You've been talking a pretty hard game, in favor of Tamako Market here, but as I recall, it took a little bit of teeth pulling for you to actually get through this show. I had to bother you about it on quite a number of occasions. So, tell me, what was it that changed your mind and turned you around on this show?
Okay, Tamako in the early goings is immensely boring. It once again, and this is sort of something that I typically don't have trouble getting through shows that follow this blueprint. I really don't, because this is sort of my bread and butter thing, and I was like, why can I not just sit down and watch the show? You know, and then I would go back and then I would watch like a few episodes and I'd be like, I just can't do it. I don't know what it is. But I think it was just because initially, I guess it must have been because when I first tried to watch it that I just was not in the mood to watch this kind of show. That's the only way I could think of it because, you know, coming back now, you know, and having finished it and watched it again, you know, I see, and having given it another try, I've sort of, you know, seen the light. And I guess that was just because, I guess it was just because that in the moment of time, specifically when I started watching the show the first time, I found it boring and hard to get through. Even though, as me, and as this is the type of show that I, you know, love a lot, you know, that's the only thing I can chalk it up to, is that I just was not in the mood for it at the time, which is kind of dumb. I know, it's kind of stupid, but, like, now coming back, you know, that doesn't matter. I mean, I like the show, it's great.
Cool.
When are we going to talk about something bad?
We only talk about bad things here on the Third Impact Anime Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have one question from our good friend Basil over the Awesome Cast. Hi, Basil. Love you. Can't wait to see you in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
So Basil asks, I always likened K-On! To the puppy bowl. The kids are very cute and endearing, but take them out of their bowl and they would be destroyed by the real world. Like, immediately. So, from Puppy Bowl to Free to Full Metal Panic, how KyoAni are these shows? I think he says these shows, but he just means Tamako Market and the film, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know, man. Why you gotta take the puppies out of the bowl? You know, just leave them in the bowl,
Leave them
you know?
where they belong.
I
that's
mean,
where puppies belong.
I would probably put this on par with Free because there's a lot of comedy, but there's also a lot of melodrama, but, like, not in a bad way. Like, there's no super high stakes, I guess, other than, like, my crush is moving to Tokyo for college.
Yeah, I think Tamako Market, weirdly enough, in all of its fantastical elements, is a little more grounded than K-On!
Yeah.
Because K-On! Exists in this very, like, high school, glitzy, idealistic sort of world. And the girls, with the exception of, like, playing their shows and going to London, sort of, they don't really deal with anything big in the outside world that they have to face. At least not really. But Tamako Market deals with some pretty deep emotional truths, such as, you know, dealing with a deceased parent, dealing with a father who is trying to raise two girls by himself while being a small business owner. Like, that's some pretty serious stuff, you know, the reality of friends growing apart and moving away, or the reality of friends becoming, you know, significant others, things like that. So I think Tamako, even though it does have a weird talking bird, it's more grounded in a lot of ways than K-On! So I feel like if we were to take the Tamako puppies out of the bowl, they would hold up in the real world a little bit better than the K-On! Puppies.
Definitely.
Yes.
I love K-On! Just throwing that out. But they're different shows.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think if you know, you take any of these characters out of the puppy bowl, they'll be just fine.
Yeah.
But if you take Yui Hirasawa out of the puppy bowl, she's probably not going to be great. But if you take Ui Hirasawa out of the puppy bowl, she'll be fine. And if you take, like, Azusa, because mean, you can never once again, like, shoehorn sort of this idea that, oh, just because they're in a moe soft show, they can't make it real hard world. You know, you can't. I don't think you can really do that, because that comes on a case by case basis.
Have you seen all those GTA mods where they give Mio a gun? What are you talking about?
Yeah, are you kidding me? Yeah. That'll be fine.
I think that the only K-On! Characters that would survive in the world, in the real world, in the wild, would be Miss Yamanaka, Azusa, and Ui.
Yeah, maybe Mugi, because she has so much money that
Yeah, she'll
she
be fine.
needs not to know of the real world.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
she'll be fine.
and she's getting that sweet McDonald's money from her part-time job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's got pickle eyebrows. What else do you need?
Mm-hmm.
What else do you need? So, I think we've come to the end of the episode, but before we close, we do have the one question that we always try and ask at the end of every episode. What do you think was the most iconic scene from the show? Andrew, you go first.
I think, non-jokingly, it'd be like Tamako catching the cup at the end, because that sort of is a, culmination of everything that movie is about.
And it's good visual storytelling too, because so often the cup just hits her in the head.
Yes, absolutely. It's parallelism,
Yes.
and it's great, and yes. Non-seriously, it would be Kana sliding around on her tights.
I love that. It's so good.
Yes.
Tori?
I really like the scene where it is Tamako's three friends, the schoolgirls, and they're talking outside at night, and they look up and like the sky is really starry, and you can see like the Milky Way, and it's just so pretty. And are we doing like one from the show and then one from the movie, or just in general?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Okay, because they're talking about like what's gonna happen after they lose their friend, and it's just like a really like important conversation in this really beautiful backdrop, and I liked that. That was nice. And then in the movie, it has to be that scene where I talked about earlier, where Tamako's like, "We've been together forever. Why are you leaving me?" So, yeah.
I think for me, we kind of already mentioned it already, but I know that whenever I'm sitting down and thinking about Tamako Market at any random time within the next 5, 10, 20 years or whatever, I will just remember that moment where Tamako's bright, smiling face pops up and says, "I will curse you."
Yeah.
That's so good.
With like the little spooky triangle thing on her head. And
blood coming out of her mouth.
Forgive me. And blood coming out of her
Yeah.
mouth, and she's just like, "I'll curse you."
Yeah, there is a name for that thing, but it is used when people are actually buried. So
Right. I knew that there was some cultural significance to it, but I am blind to it because I didn't do my research.
it's okay.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me to talk about this show. And I hope you guys listening at home enjoyed it, and I hope you'll go and watch it. It is now available on High Dive. It's also on Verve. Just look up Tamako Market. You can also buy it from Sentai Filmworks. They typically have very good sales going on their website. They've got their summer sale going on right now. I'm not sure exactly how long it will be going on for. Hopefully by the time this podcast is uploaded, the summer sale will still be going on, and you can buy the movie and the show from them. This is not sponsored by Sentai Filmworks in any way, but hey, if they're listening, we're interested. Yeah, check out this show. It's pretty cute. It's worth your time. If you're a big KyoAni fan, definitely don't forget to check this box. And yeah, thank you, Tori, for joining me.
Yep.
Thank you, Andrew.
No problem.
Yeah, and again, this is the Third Impact Anime Podcast. You can find all the information you could ever want to know about us over on our website, thirdimpactanime.com. Please follow us on Twitter, and that's twitter.com/TI_anime. You can see all of the many things that we're up to, including our giveaway that is still going on that you can take advantage of that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. Again, you can find out more information about that on our website. And Tori, where can people talk to you about how delicious mochi is?
You can find me on Twitter at worstwaifu.
Andrew, where can people sneeze on you to gain your affection?
You can find me on Twitter at toaster_Mike. That's my spot.
And for me, you can pound me into a rice cake over on Twitter at twitter.com/bebopshock. That's bebop as in Cowboy Bebop, and shock as in Bioshock. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.